So let's dive in, shall we? The policies around gang affiliations under ICE have always been, well, controversial. But under Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, this conversation has just reached like a whole new level. According to reports, ICE has been operating under a policy where their word alone can be used to classify someone as a gang member. No corroborating evidence, no second opinion. Just ICE saying, oh yeah, this person's definitely in a gang. And that's it. I mean, does that sound fair to you? The problem is, this isn't theoretical. It's not a hypothetical situation. Cases are popping up all over where individuals, many of whom are immigrants, are being wrongfully detained simply because ICE has made these kinds of accusations. And we're not talking about people with, tons of evidence stacked against them. No. We're talking about minimal, shaky evidence at best. Situations where someone's tattoo or even attending a certain event might get them labeled as gang affiliated. Honestly, it's hard not to wonder how many lives have been unfairly upended by this kind of profiling. One specific case comes to mind that highlights, well, just how troubling this can be. Imagine this. A young immigrant trying to build a better life for themselves suddenly finds their entire future derailed simply because ICE decided, without substantial evidence, that they were gang affiliated. The trauma, the legal hurdles, the disruption to their family, their community, it's devastating. And this isn't an isolated case. It's a pattern we're seeing far too often. Take a look at this clip depicting Tom Homan's stance on deportation. Play this clip.
To help identify and deport those here illegally, which has led to the resignation of the acting commissioner. And now the administration has announced that it will begin immediately screening immigrants' social media posts for any signs of anti-Semitism as a means to deny people applying for permanent resident status or to pull student visas. Joining me now is Andrea Flores, Vice President of Immigration Policy and Campaigns at Forward.us, and Jessica Levinson, Loyola Law School professor and MSNBC columnist. It's great to have both of you with us. Let's start, Andrea, I'll start with you. And this acting ICE director, Todd Lyons, was speaking at a border security expo in Arizona yesterday, where he said that his dream for the agency is squads of trucks rounding up immigrants for deportation the same way that Amazon trucks crisscross American cities delivering packages. It is a cruel image of oligarchy, technology, and authoritarianism meshing into each other.
Yeah, so it's really concerning and dehumanizing language. And as I heard that statement, one, is it not only horrifying to imagine human beings being compared to packages, but it's horrifying, and every American should ask, what is their goal here? Their goal here is clearly not public safety. It is clearly not national security. And it is very obviously about deporting every immigrant, regardless of how they entered, regardless of their legal status, and to remove them wholesale from the entire community. And so that type of immigration enforcement really has never happened before. We haven't seen green card holders suddenly lose their status because they've gone back and looked, and they're opening up case files of people who've had security for years in the United States, who've complied with our laws. So they're really punishing immigrants of all status and sending a very clear signal that they are not welcome here right now.
Jessica, I want to get your thoughts on this decision by the administration to screen immigrants' social media for evidence of anti-Semitic activity. I mean, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance defined anti-Semitism as certain perception of Jews, which may be expressed as hatred towards Jews. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed towards Jewish or non-Jewish individuals and or their property, towards Jewish community institutions and religious facilities. There are people, including the person who actually came up with the IHRA definition, who are now saying that it has been expanded so robustly and so aggressively that it is now silencing any kind of critique against Israeli policy. Your thoughts?
So my thoughts are, obviously, I think you're correct to point out that there's not an understood definition of things like hate speech or anti-Semitism. The other, of course, is to remember that while immigration laws are really a subject of administrative grace, in the sense that nobody has the right to immigrate to this country, when people are here, they do have constitutional rights. So when it comes to, for instance, the idea of targeting people based on what they said or depriving people of due process, for instance, we have to be concerned about those constitutional protections. And I think that's much of what we're seeing in the court cases recently is the Supreme Court saying, for instance, just this week, if people are attempted to be deported or put in custody as a result of something like the Alien Enemies Act, which of course has only been used during wartime, make sure that they have due process. The same thing I think goes for situations where people are targeted based on the content of speech. That's something where we need to keep an eye on the idea that the government isn't picking winners or losers or who gets to live here or not get to live here based on constitutionally protected rights.
This group, Andrea, Stop Anti-Semitism, sent a letter to the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, saying that children's YouTube star and Netflix host, Miss Rachel, should be investigated for spreading Hamas propaganda simply for expressing sympathy for Palestinian children in her social media posts. Again, would caring for children now be considered anti-Semitic activity by this administration and the Pandora's box that it opens up with? Because it may start with anti-Semitism. It certainly would not end there.
So every American should be deeply concerned that they're going after the free speech rights of non-citizens, because history has always shown that they start with immigrants and they move to U.S. citizens. And so in addition to these free speech issues, I want to go back to that Supreme Court decision where they so clearly stated that non-citizens are entitled to due process. But the reason that that's so important is that they are setting up a mechanism to remove as many people as possible to places like El Salvador, and they are openly saying they want to send U.S. citizens. There's now been more than 2 statements from administration officials. And why I want to point that out is that if you are being disappeared because of your free speech, if you're being disappeared without process, that will go against the Supreme Court's decision. And so my question for policymakers and for Congress is, what kind of process will they be demanding that this administration sets up to make sure that mistakes...
Policies like these claim to prioritize security, but at what cost? They seem to instill more fear than anything else. And I'm not just talking about fear within immigrant communities. There's a broader issue here about accountability. Who's holding ICE responsible when these classifications turn out to be wrong? Who's, stepping up to say, hey, wait a minute, this isn't okay. And to be fair, this isn't a simple problem with a simple solution. But if we don't talk about it, if we don't scrutinize the policies and demand better, then how can we expect the system to change? Now, let's shift gears a little and talk about local resistance, because honestly, this is where you see real courage coming into play. Like, take Canyon City, Colorado, for instance. This small town rallied together in what I can only describe as a remarkable show of solidarity. They actually protested against the detention of 3 children, standing together as a community to make their voices heard. And the thing is, it worked. It became not just, a protest, but almost like a model of what community resilience can really look like. But of course, not every community has had the same success. Sanctuary cities, for example, they're kind of in this constant tug of war. You got folks like Tom Homan saying that sanctuary city policies won't stop ICE. Basically, his stance is like, we're going to do what we're going to do, no matter what. And then on the other side, you've got communities trying to, protect their people and push back against these federal actions. It's a tense dynamic, to say the least. What's really inspiring, though, is seeing these grassroots efforts actually make a difference sometimes. Like, there have been community-led initiatives that manage to halt deportation cases. It's incredible because it shows the power of, activism, but also the power of people standing firm together. And it's not just about stopping one deportation. It's about reshaping the entire narrative around immigration policies. It's about saying isn't right, and we won't stand for it. It makes me think, how many more of these success stories could we see if more communities got involved? If more people said, no, this is unacceptable, and actually took action. It's a tough fight, but, the victories we do see, no matter how small, they really matter. They show that change is possible, even when it feels like the odds are completely stacked against you. Now, let's dig into the contrasting strategies between the Trump and Biden administrations when it comes to immigration enforcement. Because honestly, their approaches couldn't be more different. Under the Trump administration and figures like Tom Homan, we see a renewed focus on aggressive enforcement tactics. Family detention was brought back into the discussion, something Homan and others openly pledged to reinstate. There were calls for ramping up ICE's resources, more agents, more detention spaces, to expedite deportations on a massive scale. The mindset is essentially a numbers game. How many deportations could they accomplish as quickly as possible? In contrast, the Biden administration, at least on paper, leaned into something more data-driven, more reform-minded. Instead of focusing purely on enforcement, they tried to emphasize collaboration with international partners and policies aimed at addressing root causes of migration. It's a shift that, in theory, should create a more sustainable system, one that looks beyond just apprehensions and deportations. But of course, that shift hasn't been without its challenges, or, let's be honest, its critics. And here's the key question. Can we find a balance? Can there be pragmatic enforcement that still respects the dignity and humanity of individuals seeking a better life? Because right now, it feels like there's this constant tug of war between security and compassion, as though the two can't coexist. But why not? Why can't we create a system that works effectively without compromising on basic human values? It's a question worth asking, and frankly, it's one we don't seem to ask enough. There's also this opportunity, if we're willing to look at both of these approaches critically, to learn what works and what doesn't. What are the best practices from both administrations that can be combined or adapted moving forward? Because at the end of the day, that's really what this conversation should be about. Finding solutions that are not only effective, but also just. Solutions that serve security needs without sacrificing our humanity in the process. It's a tough balance to strike, but it's certainly not impossible. And that wraps up today's episode of The Real 411. I just want to take a moment to thank each and every one of you for tuning in. Your support truly means the world. You know, these conversations aren't always easy, but they're so necessary if we're going to challenge the status quo and push for real change. If you found value in today's discussion, I invite you to share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. And of course, don't forget to follow The Real 411 on social media. That's where we keep the conversation going and update you on all things newsworthy. Also, be sure to sign up for our email newsletter so you never miss an update or exclusive insight. It's one of the best ways to stay plugged in and informed. And hey, if you believe in independent media, in media that's willing to dig deeper and give you the real story, consider supporting our work. We're on Substack and Fanbase with both free and paid subscriptions available. Your support helps us keep doing what we do, producing content that informs, empowers, and sparks the kind of conversations that really matter. So, until next time, remember this. The story is never just the headline. Stay informed, stay bold, and stay real. Take care, everyone.